My next guest is taking matters into his own hands, introducing legislation to scale back qualified immunity for police. And it has Senate Republicans divided. Joining me right now is Indiana Senator, member of the Agriculture Committee and Environment and Public Works Committee, Mike Braun. It's good to have you on the program this morning, Senator. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to ask you about qualified immunity. I spoke with the AG about that this weekend, and he said, look, if you don't have qualified immunity protections for the police, you're not going to have many people want to go become police officers.
I agree with that 100%, but that's talking about eliminating qualified immunity. I look at this in running a company for 37 years before I became a senator. Every business has inherent liability to what they do, and the business of law enforcement has got to be one of the most difficult and tricky ones out there, because you suit up, your life is at risk every day. You never know what's going to happen. But when you evolve through the judicial review that's kind of protected unions to be able to maybe not have that accountability and transparency, you do not want your entity to be stigmatized by cases of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Rayshard Brooks. And when you get to the point where that's kind of the emblem of what you do, you've got to make tough decisions. And nobody should want to have no accountability or not have ability to redress it. And you need to change procedures and protocols that fix it. And, my idea is, if you do not at least talk about it, put a template out there, you're going to end up having something where a year or two down the road, political winds change, it gets eliminated. And that would make that job, you'd have mass exodus from people going into law enforcement. So it's a tricky balance between accepting some accountability, getting rid of those horrific incidences, and rebuild what is so good about law enforcement, because they do such a good job in general.
So the collective bargaining agreements, what do you say about that? Because some people feel like this union hold is one of the reasons we can't see reform move forward, because of just that. There's bargaining agreements that keeps the police protected.
That's the irony of the whole discussion, because that would be part and parcel of a democratic philosophy that has allowed unions sometimes to bargain to the point of being ridiculous. And it happens in other public employee unions as well. So it's got a lot of inherent contradictions. Sure. Running an operation is never simple. I think it's in their own best interest to maybe do something that shows that they want to be accountable and transparent without hampering them with frivolous lawsuits.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Let me switch gears to ask you about China. The president is defending the China trade deal, shutting down remarks by White House trade advisor Peter Navarro that the deal was, quote, over. But doing business with Beijing is threatening American strength. I spoke with U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr this weekend, who told me exclusively that American businesses are prioritizing profit over patriotism. Watch this.
They haven't been competing fairly, and the president has confronted this when no one else has. And the American business community has been a big part of the problem, because they're willing, ultimately, many of them, to sacrifice the long-term viability of their companies for short-term profit so they can get their stock options and move into the Gulf resort. That's what's driving some of this. They're not taking the long-term view and the national view, the American, of maintaining the American strength.
Well, I was talking with one money manager the other day, and he said, look, Maureen, I'm not going to call good guys and bad guys. It's not my role to call out good guys and bad guys. So, yeah, the growth is in China, and that's where I want to invest.
Well, you know what? We're not speaking German today because the American business in the past didn't think that way. They stood with the United States. And all the privileges and the benefits and the stability and the rule of law and the ability to profit as they do, both as companies and individuals, comes from the strength of this country.
What do you think about that, Senator? It's really interesting that he's comparing what's happening in Beijing, Xi Jinping, to the Nazis.
Well, sometimes you use hyperbole to make a point, but everything Attorney General Barr said there is pretty well on the mark, because China has evolved in the relationship vis-a-vis us to where they don't play by the rules. I won't list all the things that they do, but until President Trump came along and maybe having a stark assessment like Barr just issued, we've given them too much slack. And yes, I come from the world of business, don't like tariffs, but China is not going to listen to normal discussions, and it has gotten to the point where if we do not get tough with them, we do not have businesses start to diversify their supply chain, to not be in cahoots with a country like that, that's a bad business partner. Sooner or later, that'll come home to roost, and the administration's got it right there. Business needs to know that's not a good long-term relationship to have anyway.
Yeah, well, we'll see if they get it, because so far it is more important to sell widgets to the 1.4 billion people, according to many companies. All right, let me switch gears, ask you about the U.S. The July 4th recess just around the corner. White House Chief Economic Advisor Larry Kudlow says that the administration will negotiate another wave of stimulus checks following the holiday break. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin doubling down on those comments, saying that the next round of stimulus is something that Congress should, quote, seriously consider. Will there be more stimulus, and what should it look like, Senator?
So this is going to draw out two issues in clear focus. How strong was our economy coming into this coronavirus thing? It was the hottest economy than any of us have participated in the last many, many decades. I have faith that it's going to come back strong. We'll see who the true fiscal conservatives are. We've already dumped $2.8 trillion. A lot of that hasn't even been checked to see if it's working. It hasn't been totally utilized. So you're going to start to see some in the Republican conference. I don't think you'll have any squirming on the Democratic side. They don't believe in fiscal integrity. It's going to be a tougher discussion this time. I have faith that the Trump economy is going to be probably the reason Mnuchin may be a little bit off the mark in terms of how much more government is needed. That's a slippery slope when we're borrowing every penny in terms of what we're going to spend.
Yeah, especially since our debt is pretty much about the size of the entire economy right now.
It's larger than the entire economy. Yeah.
There you go. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thank you, sir.
You bet.